The Red Sox could be cooking with a little bit of gas here, folks, and it could be coming at the perfect time. What is going on, everybody? Welcome back to Red Seat Radio. My name is Corbin, and thank you very much for clicking on this video. That's right, folks. The Red Sox, they're a little bit hot right now. They just swept the Colorado Rockies, which brings their win streak up to 6 games in a row right now. That is tied for their longest win streak of the 2025 season. On top of that, it's also the first time the Red Sox have swept back-to-back series since June of 2022. So it's been a little bit since we've seen something like this from this Red Sox team. What this does to their overall record on the season, for the first time in a little bit, it gives them a little bit of cushion over that 500 mark, which is always a good place to be. They are officially 49-45 on the season, 4 games over 500. That officially puts them tied for the final wild card spot in the AL. And for those of you that are still paying attention to the division, it puts them about 5.5 games back of the Toronto Blue Jays. Not that I think a whole lot of you guys are really paying attention to the division at this point in the season. Now, you may be sitting there and you may be saying, well, Corbin, yeah, they won 6 games in a row, but look at the opponents, right? These are opponents who are not good opponents. In fact, I would go as far to say that these are bad opponents, right? These are opponents that you sit there and you sit with the Red Sox and you say, these are the teams that the Red Sox need to beat up on, and that's exactly what they did. Why are we celebrating that? Well, first and foremost, I think it's important to remember that throughout this season so far, we've said that multiple times and had much different outcomes, right? Teams like the Chicago White Sox, we've said that against, certainly had different opinions as to how that series went. Teams like the Los Angeles Angels, again, let's talk about how those series went, right? It's much different to sit here and say, oh, the Red Sox should have taken care of business over these opponents than saying, oh, the Red Sox need to take care of the business against these opponents, right? It's much easier to sit back after the fact and say, yeah, the Red Sox should have done that, than it is to sit back here at the beginning of it and say the Red Sox need to do it, right? Those are two different conversations. So I think that's a big point to remember in all of this. I also think you sit there and you say, yes, the Red Sox needed to take care of business. And yes, the Red Sox did take care of business against teams they needed to, but they also kind of did it in the best way possible. And what I mean by that is they relied heavily on an offense that's on absolute fire right now that reaches beyond the confines of just these 3 games. I mean, let's just go over the numbers on this offense a little bit, because in this series, it was flat out ridiculous, right? I mean, it was kind of just straight up video game numbers. They scored 29 runs in this series. That is an average of almost 10 runs per baseball game. The only game they didn't score 10 runs in was the first game where they scored 9. In this series, they had 9 home runs. That's 3 a game, folks. 7 doubles and 2 triples. Again, video game numbers. I'm not lying to you about it, right? It's honestly really hard to pick which player was the best offensive player in this series for the Red Sox, because all of them really had their shining moment here. But I think you kind of have to give it to Romy Gonzalez, because Gonzalez in this series had 6 hits, 2 home runs, 2 triples, 4 RBIs, and it's been genuinely just flat out unbelievable. I mean, I don't know what they're feeding Gonzalez down there in that dugout, but please continue to do it, because he is mashing baseballs, and it's not just against lefties anymore. He's hitting home runs against righties. He's hitting home runs and triples against anybody you put out on that mound. He is on absolute fire right now, but it didn't stop with him. Not even a little bit. Duran found his power stroke in this series, hitting the longest home run at Fenway this season, and another one in the finale for good measure. This dude rarely bat flips, so you know when he does bat flip twice in a series, he is feeling himself. I said this on Twitter, but once the league figures out that Jarren Duran figured out how to bat flip, it may be over for them, right? If Duran's starting to hit balls this far, things may get a little bit interesting for this Red Sox team very quickly. Story looked like vintage Colorado Story, which was kind of fitting for the series he's had. He's really looked like vintage Colorado Story for the last, I would say, month or so. He's looked absolutely fantastic. Don remains your hottest hitter right now, I believe, right? The numbers are really close. He sat in the last game, so Romy may be a little bit hotter than he is right now, but it's a pretty damn close race as to who can bash in pitchers' heads faster, Romy or Don Rafaela. Wilyer Abreu only played in 2 games, but had a double and a home run in those 2 games. So, hey, he's still doing his part, right? Marcelo looks like he's getting out of his funk a little bit. Roman Anthony continues to swing a hot bat. He had 6 hits in this series, including his first Fenway Park home run, which was to dead center and sounded like a missile off his bat, because of course it did, right? Masataka Yoshida, hell, even that dude came back in this series for the first time this season, went 3 for 4 with an RBI and a ground rule double. I mean, literally every single person person in this lineup right now, we could sit here and we could walk through what they did in this series and really what they've been doing over the last, I would say, 10 to 12 games here, right? And you could sit there and you could talk about their individual accomplishments, but I'm just pumped about this offense in general. It feels like everyone's cooking with gas, right? It feels like everyone's doing their job, whether that be big hits from players you need big hits from in big situations specifically, which is something we have not seen a ton of from the Red Sox this season, or whether it's simply just passing the baton, right? Maybe Marcelo Meyer isn't going yard every at bat, but hey, he's gonna rip a single into left field, and then Romy Gonzalez is gonna hit a nuke, or whatever which way it is. They're passing the baton to each other. They are playing together as one singular unit, and I think that may be my favorite part of this. I mean, again, you take a look at it and you say, well, Corbin is just this bad opponent, right? Obviously, they're going to beat up on it, but you date this back to, I don't know, the Blue Jays series. Let's start there, right? Since the Blue Jays series, they've scored 96 runs in 12 games. That's an average of 8 runs a game. That's absurdly high, right? It's just incredibly impressive to watch what this Red Sox offense is doing right now, and it doesn't really feel like they're going to slow up anytime soon. They're beating good pitchers. They're beating bad pitchers. They're just simply beating everybody. But just because I want to rave about the offense for so long doesn't mean that the pitching doesn't deserve its spotlight either, because they did have some really big moments in this series. I think specifically from your starting pitching rotation, you had some really big moments. I mean, Brayan Bello may have had the biggest moment out of anyone in this series, where he went 9 innings and pitched the first complete game of the Red Sox 2025 season. Only 2 earned runs, and those came in that 9th inning. He was 2 outs away from completing a shutout complete game. That would have been absolutely fantastic, right? 10 strikeouts in this series as well for Bello, with 15 whiffs. Both of those are season highs. You want to talk about, okay, yes, it was a bad opponent, but getting that changeup back for Brayan Bello is going to be the difference between him legitimately coming into his own as a number 2 or number 3 in a rotation and sort of sitting in that 3 or 4 spot. Brayan Bello in this series had 5 swing and misses on his changeup. That is the highest of his season so far. Not to be outdone, Lucas Giolito also went out there and again gave you a really solid performance. It was 6 innings, 4 hits, no earned runs, and struck out 6. His ERA is right there with Bello, right? We're starting to have a conversation of both of these guys getting towards a sub-3 ERA coming out of the All-Star break. Bello's got one more start here. That was Giolito's last start before the break. Bello's is sitting at 3.27. Giolito's is sitting at 3.36. Those are really, really solid ERA numbers from both of these guys. And again, you go back to, oh, Corbin, this was because of a bad opponent. Then explain to me why Bello's been doing this for the last month and a half, why Giolito's been doing this for the last month and a half, right? These guys have been solid for the last month and a half, and they're just simply highlighted in this series with how good they were. And I do want to mention Richard Fitz in here too, right? He had a solid start, maybe his best start of the season so far. I did want to mention him in here. I don't want to make sure he's excluded from this conversation because all the starting pitchers were solid in this series. The bullpen was also solid in this series, right? You didn't have to use them a whole lot. There really weren't a whole lot of high leverage guys slapped into this series all this much, but they performed their job when they needed to. I will say, when we're talking about this bullpen, I think we're going to need to see a larger sample size before I say this wasn't about the opponent, like I've been kind of preaching with all these other players. I was impressed with how the bullpen acted as well. I think throughout this video, you've noticed a theme, right? And that's me coming back to the idea of, oh, Corbin, this is just them beating up on a bad team that they should have beaten up on, right? That this is a team that the Red Sox should have beat every single day. And I don't get why we're celebrating this, because I know that's sort of going to be the reaction amongst Red Sox fans. And I do understand that, but I also think it's important to remember the timing of this all. Right? I think it's important to remember when the Red Sox are getting hot here, because first and foremost, they're getting hot the early days of July. As we know, July is deadline season for a lot of teams. For the most part, July can really make or break a season here. You can truly end up selling just simply because of how you did in July. You can end up simply buying because of how well you did in July. And obviously, there are a whole lot of other factors here as well, but ultimately, it comes down to where you are in the standings, and a lot of that is determined as in how you play in July. There was a legitimate opportunity here for the Red Sox to totally sink their season. Imagine had they come in to this Rays series and they even winning these series, these last 2 series, you're maybe 2 games over 500. You're still sitting there and you're saying, boy, you probably should have swept one of these, right? You probably would have lost one of those games either because of a bad bullpen or because of bad hitting or because of bad defense or whatever, right? You'd be pointing to those things saying, gee, golly, I really hope this doesn't totally dismantle the Red Sox. And they didn't do that. I think it's important to remember the timing of this. I also think it's important to remember that this team is incredibly young. This team is filled with rookies, second-year players, guys still trying to figure out who they are at major league level. Even when they're veterans, right? You're either talking about guys who are trying to come back and reinvent themselves in Major League Baseball, or you're talking about guys who are trying to come off the IL. That's basically where you're at with this team. Momentum is massive for a team like that. Again, you talk about it. Why does this matter? Well, confidence is everything with a young baseball team. They feel confident. They feel like they own the world. They play like that. Most of the time they play like that. Sometimes it even outbeats talent. I think that's important to remember with why this series and why this stretch in particular could be really important going forward. And then the other part of this is hopefully you get into the All-Star break and you know, you're sitting a couple of games above 500 here. You're feeling good about yourself. And then you come out of it and you got this absolute gauntlet of a stretch here for the Red Sox. I mean, just look at this schedule, right? It's against the Chicago Cubs, who are the division leaders in the NL Central, the Philadelphia Phillies, who are the leaders in the NL East, the Dodgers, who have the second best record in the entire sport. Not to mention, you kick all of this off with a 4-game stretch against the Tampa Bay Rays, who are directly above you, not only in the division, but in the wild card race as well, right? You're starting to get to a point here where, hey, these are the games that are going to decide your season. Imagine again, you come into this stretch having, 6-4 in this stretch or whatever, right? Instead, you're 8-2. Instead, you're coming off a 6-game winning streak. Instead, you're coming off of just an absolute bludgeoning of a team you needed to bludgeon, right? And again, it goes back to that confidence. They have the confidence now, and they've shown that they could be a competitive baseball team, and they know what they can be. And I think that's incredibly important for this young baseball team. But I don't want to get too ahead of myself, right? I don't want to sit here and declare the Red Sox are back or the Red Sox are going to play well throughout the rest of the season or whatever, right? Because they still need to do it. There's a big difference between building momentum and sustaining momentum. And right now they built that momentum. We need to see if they can sustain it. And for that, I'm going to hold off my judgment. I'm not going to sit here and declare anything because we've seen this team time and time again this season build momentum, but be unable to sustain it. For them to really turn this corner, now is the time to start sustaining it. You get yourself a little bit of a break. If you could split this Rays series, you head into the All-Star break, 4 games over 500. That should put you in a nice spot to at least bare minimum survive this stretch against these juggernauts in the NL. Best case scenario here, you really prove yourself against some of the best teams in baseball. So a whole lot left to be played in July, but this is a really, really great start. So let me know in the comments down below, what do you think? What do you think about this series? What do you think about the offense, the pitching, whatever? But also let me know what you think about the Red Sox doing what they're doing at this particular time in the season. Let me know all your thoughts in the comments. As always, if you made it to the end of this video, do me a favor. Make sure you guys have hit that subscribe button if you haven't already. If you're new here, we talk Red Sox content almost every single day. Also, make sure you guys have hit the like button on this video as well. It just simply helps out a ton. It's the best way to let me know you're enjoying the content. Thank you all very much for clicking on this one, and I will see you in the red seats.